Welcome, Lynn Smothers. Lynn, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am so blessed and honored to be here with you guys today. Nothing like doing Summer Spectacular and being a part of this conference. So thank you for asking me to do this.
Of course, of course. If you could kind of start, I kind of want to, I want for everyone who's watching to be able to kind of feel your passion because I know you're a very passionate person. You've always been a very passionate person, whether you've done that when you before you worked for us, now that you've been working for us. But I kind of want to start a little bit at the beginning. If you could kind of tell me where did you get your chiropractic start? Like, when did you first experience chiropractic care?
Well, I knew Dr. Mayfield. Hi, Dr. Mayfield. I knew Dr. Mayfield. I knew a lot about her. We were on the chamber together. And I actually had lost my job, was looking for another job, but I didn't just want a job. I wanted a job where I could really be out in the community. I knew a lot of people in the community. Like, how can I really touch their heart the way that I want to touch their heart? I walked into Dr. Mayfield's office. They offered me a position on the spot, took home the How to Stay Young class, if we all remember that. Dr. Mayfield said, listen to this and call me. I think 45 minutes later, Ryan, I'm like, when can I start? Can I start today? This is exactly what I want to do. She, in turn said, yeah, come in tomorrow. We'll get you started tomorrow. And that is how my journey started.
Wow, wow. So had you been a patient of hers ever before? Had you done chiropractic at any or been to a chiropractor before?
No,
No. So that was
never.
so
I
you
knew
just
Dr. Mayfield, but kind of I had a history with Dr. Mayfield because 10 or 12 years prior to that, I had breast cancer. And I set up the Relay for Life in Jefferson County, and her doctors and her team joined me. And that's how I met her. And it's just, I mean, talk about God putting you at the right place at the right time. Then this happens. And as you can see, as we talk later, you'll see, oh my gosh, the connection that nobody even seen coming that day.
wow. So you started working for it. You were sold on what you heard in the How to Stay Young class.
I
You were
was
sold on the mission, the whole works, and you hadn't even been a patient yet.
not at all. I listened to that CD, How to Stay Young. And she said, this is your job. If you can preach this message to people out in the community, then this is a job for you. And if you have a hard time with any of this, we'll talk about it. I'm like, no, I want to start. I think it was 8:30 at night when I called her, said, can I start tonight? She's like, no, but you can start tomorrow morning. And that was how I got my start.
Wow. Wow. So then how long into your experience with her did you really start, kind of getting to know us and kind of discovering who we are and what we did?
6 weeks after that, I went to my first integrity conference. And that's when I met you. And that's when I met Keith. And Keith scared the bejesus out of me at that conference because he said, there's somebody out there I want you guys to meet. 6 weeks into this job, guys, 6 weeks. Keith Mall, the Keith Mall, pulls me on stage and had me tell my story. I think 6 weeks into it, I was at 42 new patients. I just
Wow.
couldn't wait to shout it from the rooftops. Everybody needed to experience what she could do. The way that you felt after an adjustment was just amazing to me. And I was probably in my middle 50s at that time. Um, could do things again that I really had seen was kind of pulling me back just a little bit. I'm like, wow, this is like a breath of youth with getting an adjustment. This is some good stuff she's doing. I just really went out and preached that gospel, and that's really 6 weeks into it. I had hit my new patient goal for 3 months.
Wow. Wow. So we're talking all of this moved, moved very quickly. And then you became a coach for us. So at what point how soon, how long did you go before you did that? How long were you just working in the office before? Because if I recall correctly, weren't you still worked in the office for a while you were coaching for us?
I did. I did. And I can say I'm still a part of the proactive team today because I mean, wow, the stuff that Dr. Mayfield can do for people in my community. Probably my goal since I've been a coach is always to try to hit 5 to 10 new patients for one of our doctors. And I can say I've successfully done that in the last almost 7 years as a coach already.
Wow.
Just
So from when that time when Keith told you that, he believed you were going to do this, that this was a big thing for you. When did you come on working for us after that?
about 4 years later.
4 years later. That's all. And you were
Years
with Dr. Mayfield that whole time.
I
The-
was.
wow. Wow. For those of you who may not know, Dr. Mayfield has been an awesome long time elite doctor for us. She was a coach for us as well. So I mean, they are an incredible team there at Proactive Chiropractic. So that's truly awesome. Now, naturally, somewhere along the line there, I think I know the date. I think I could tell you, but somewhere along the line there, some not so great news. It seemed like it was kind of, I want to say 2017. Does that sound correct? Was it around there?
Correct.
So what was that? If you could kind of explain what you were hit with, and this is while you were working for us. This is while you're working for Dr. Mayfield. What news did you get?
Well, I was a coach about a year, but of course I saw Dr. Mayfield every single month for my wellness exam still. And we were blessed with our grandson, who is very, very handicapped. He will never see, hear, talk, walk. He's our little man. And I mean, I live and breathe for that little boy, anybody who knows me. That is my survivor buddy all the way. But I thought that I was just getting sick because we were going through a lot. He was in ICU. We were told if he lived 6 days, it would be a miracle. He's here 6 years now.
Wow.
Going through a lot. That's a lot on a family. Everybody had to jump in and kind of help raise this little boy who had a lot of medical issues. And me and Dr. Lynette talked about that. She said, you know what, though? Something's not right with you. So I saw my medical doctor after I saw her first. Dr. Mayfield being my first contact when I even sneeze and cough wrong. I saw my medical doctor. He sent me in for an ultrasound. The test came back negative, Ryan. Normal gallbladder ultrasound, normal ultrasound KUB. Nothing showed. Dr. Mayfield said, I don't believe that. Something's going on. I couldn't eat. I was losing weight and I couldn't eat ice cream. Anybody who knows me, if I can't eat ice cream, that's a big deal because I love ice cream. So she said, let's get some more tests done. So we went back to the doctor again and they did some more x-rays. Still nothing, Ryan. This is like 8 weeks into it now. I was doing coaching calls and I talked to Dr. Mayfield that afternoon and I said, I'm really having shortness of breath. She said, stop coaching calls. I'll call Shelly. Tell her we're going to take care of the calls. You get somebody to take you to the hospital. I get to the hospital. They take me over and do an ultrasound and an x-ray. And I will never forget that doctor walks in and says, how strong of a woman are you? And I said, I'm pretty strong. Throw it at me. What's going on? I can handle it. He said, you have ovarian cancer. And he said, it's so bad that we're shipping you by ambulance tonight. I'm like, I can't go tonight. I got calls in the morning. I don't have my computer with me. Shelly is going to clobber me if I don't get those calls done. He said, you're going. They called an ambulance. I went. I saw an oncologist the next morning. She said, you've got a lot of cancer going on in your belly, lady. We're scheduling you for surgery in a couple days. So got to come home, got to do my calls a couple days. We went back in and had surgery. It was a lot of surgery. It was really tough on my family. From what I understand, they gave me 8 pints of blood. I think you bleed out at 10. I'm not a medical person, but I think so. And probably they came out some point and said, we have to call in another surgeon. She's got so much cancer growing in her stomach that we now have to even do a colostomy. Well, my husband knows there's two things I said. If you ever sign a permit for a trach or a colostomy, I'll divorce you when I can. I've worked in the medical field. I've taken care of both of those patients, and it was no fun. So he told my daughter, I can't sign that. They got to wake your mom up. She's like, give me the paper. I'll sign it. I'll sign your name. The doctor told my daughter, I don't know if she's going to make it. She said, you don't know my mom. My mom's pretty strong. Get out of surgery, was in ICU, I think 5 or 7 days, Ryan, on a vent, 24 hours. They got me off that, thank God. But they had to do a lot of surgery, a lot of blood that I had lost. They said, your mom is probably going to never be able to maybe walk normal, maybe ever work again. Look at me, work. Just been a blessing. I, at that point in time, had to heal up from my surgery. I did a round of chemo at that point in time. I will never forget being home, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks. And I got a call from Shelly. Shelly said, how long are you going to lay on that couch and feel sorry for yourself? And I said, oh my God, really? She's like, I know what you love to do. And I cried and said, you know what? You're right. She said, do 2 calls. Let's start you out with 2 calls. Next week, we'll do 5 calls. Within a month, I think I was doing 30 calls with Shelly. Bottom line is, listen to Shelly. She knows what she's talking about. She knew exactly what I needed, and I needed my PRs on the other end, making me feel more special, Ryan, than I could ever make them feel. Now I had more of a mission than I've ever had before, because if I was not seeing Dr. Mayfield, I don't think I'd be here. And they told me, if you make it 6 months, you have a fighting chance. 5.5 years, and I'm still here, and I'm still working. And I can't say working because this is not a job. When you get to change the way people get to live, the way people get to work, bottom line is the way I get to play with my grandkids. Last weekend, I almost broke my neck on a slip and slide, Ryan, for goodness sakes, because it held 120 pounds and I was 118 and I was going up that thing and I was sliding back down it. I couldn't do those kind of things. I guess a month ago, we found out that the bad boy is kind of coming back again. My cancer medication is not really holding it at bay. So they put me on a new medication. That new medication, listen to this side effect. Get rid of the cancer cells, but you won't be able to walk. So I'm not going to choose cancer cells over walking. I'm going to do both. So what we did is we just upped my adjustments to every week. I have not had one problem. I'm walking just fine, thank you. And why? Because of my lifesaver, Dr. Mayfield. The bottom line is, if I can do it, we can all do it.
You know, I have to kind of, I want to go back for a second because I want to make sure I don't, even you tell, like there was a lot in there, and there was something I want to make sure that because I'm guessing, just because I know what ovarian cancer is, because my aunt passed from it. If I'm guessing you were probably given stage 4, would that be correct?
That is correct.
So stage 4 cancer. You said in there, because I want to make sure, because you blew past it, but it's a bigger thing. They told you had 6 months. Is that?
That is correct. When I was first diagnosed,
they gave you 6 months to live, and here we are over 5 years later.
5.5.
5.5 years later.
I'm counting. I count the months, Ryan. I count the months. It'll be 6 years, December 1st, guys.
6 years, December 1st. Now, in that time period, what, like from the time that you got out of surgery, you got better and you got home, during the last, let's say, 4 years before this latest news, how often do you get adjusted? Like, how often do you go to the doctor?
It really depends. I go once a month for my wellness exam. But if I cough or sneeze, we go to the doctor. If I'm just not feeling right that day or extremely tired, I call Dr. Mayfield's office. And I think that her entire staff has been trained. I could almost bet that if Lynn Smothers calls, she gets on the schedule with somebody today, which I'm sure I want to think that I'm that special that they make allowances for me. But I really feel that's just how they treat all of their patients, honestly. Maybe a tad bit better with me,
Mm-hmm.
but I can say I've worked there and I know that's how she treats them all.
Would you say during this time, and during the time that you've obviously passed the 6 month mark, what was the most adjustments you got at one time? Like, were you going weekly? Like would
When I first came home from the hospital, Dr. Mayfield did visits on my front porch. Honestly, we wore a mask. She did them on my front porch because she did not want to bring germs into my house. When I first went home, she was coming by twice a week. And I'm sure we did that for 2 months. A house call she did for 2 solid months. Then we probably went to the office once a week. And anytime I do chemo, the IV chemo, this will be the third time in 5 years. Then we go back to weekly adjustments, just
weekly adjustments?
because, if nothing else, I get to see her amazing staff and her.
Well, I mean, and here's the one thing that I think is the one of the biggest, neatest things about this, because I think you would kind of attribute it to chiropractic anyway. For you to say now that the cancer is back, that means it went away. That means ovarian, which is about the worst one, if we're being honest. It's one of the
Yes,
worst. It doesn't ever go away. It's
right.
the one that usually is if they tell you 6 months, it's 6 months. And
Right.
for you to have been told 6 months and then go 5 years, what did your cancer doctors think of this? What has been their reaction?
Well, my cancer doctor is the professor of Washington University Hospital, teaching hospital. And every time I go in to see her, she's got a ton of students. And my advice to them, and she just giggles, she's like, you are in for a treat when you go in and see this lady. My best advice to them is I'm like, you've got this degree to treat cancer. Now you need to go to Logan. It's right here, not far. Because if you could do both and adjust, just think of the patients you could save.
So
They
would
all
you
kind
so would you say, just to be totally clear, to make it as easy as possible, would you say that these 5 years, would you credit that to chiropractic? Would you
yes,
say
I
that
would.
you would say
I would
that the
keep,
reason you have gotten better, the reason you are here today is because of chiropractic?
I would. And having a good mindset.
Yeah.
I
See,
can just tell you the way I feel after chemo. And you get to be friends with other chemo patients. You really develop a relationship with them. Sad to say, you don't really keep those relationships long because they're not making it. You are. They're not stage 4. I'm stage 4. They're stage 1 and stage 2. I cannot tell you how many of them that I've given out Dr. Mayfield's card. Like, this is the success. This is what you need to do.
so what would for anyone out there that's, let's say, that's a new staff member, or a new doctor who hasn't had much experience in the profession yet, you know, what what would you tell them about this profession? What would you tell them about what chiropractic means to you?
It saved my life. When I get to coach for integrity and talk to my PRs, they all hear my story. If this is making this much of a difference to a stage 4 ovarian cancer patient, 90% of the people, 90% of us today on the call, you guys aren't dealing with this. Just imagine what you could do with a normal person.
Mhm.
And I always go back to, it makes perfectly good sense. We are getting rid of the nerve interference, and God knows how much nerve interference I must have with the chemo drugs. You know, they give you these chemo drugs to kill cancer. Well, it doesn't put up a shield over your liver and your lungs and your heart. I'm tested every month for all that stuff. Ryan, it's not affecting anything. Why do you think that is? Because we put a cage over all that by keeping everything working. I will never forget, Dr. Mayfield taught me what you're doing is the body's got a big cell phone in it. And everything in your body, Lynn, is getting the right signal. And it's to naturally heal. When everything's in line, everything's getting the right signal. That's got to be the picture here. That's got to be what we're doing. And like I said, if it's done it to me, just imagine what we get to do as practice reps, for goodness sakes. You get to be that person that takes somebody's hand and takes them to the right doctor that can save their life. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. Well, I think one of the key reasons that I asked you to do this, and I didn't say this when we started because I knew where it would go. I know your passion for this thing, and I think we have taught team members, doctors for years that when you're talking to patients, to kind of keep a record of what we call we have a patient too, or I know a patient too. And I truly believe that this is one that every office should be using. I think I wanted all of them to meet you so that they could say, hey, I've met a patient who, and I think that there are loads of us who have been in situations where you hear things like this, but your story is just amazing. There's no way around it. And your passion for chiropractic is amazing. And if we could get all of our patients and all of our team members and all of our doctors in the profession, for that matter, to have the passion for this thing that you have, this profession will be absolutely unstoppable.
And we have to, because people are dying from cancer and they don't have to.
That's right. That's right. And you know it's the reason. This is the reason you're here. And 6 years later, you're not going anywhere. And we know that we have seen that. There's been hiccups all along this way, but
Yes.
every time it comes. And I will say there's some prayer in there too. We have our times where we throw that out there too. That's definitely played a part. But at the end of the day, Lynn, we are blessed to have you. We are grateful for you. We love you. We appreciate you being a member of our team. And every single person who gets to hear this today now is a better person for it. So thank you for joining us today. We are grateful.
Thank you for believing in me. If it weren't for you and Keith, just imagine where I'd be. I'm just so blessed to be a part of this Integrity family.
Thank you, Lynn.
Love you.
Love you too.